Mark's life unravels when he discovers his wife Clara's affair, a betrayal that shakes the foundation of their 15-year marriage. Armed with undeniable evidence, he confronts her, setting off a chain of events that transforms their quiet suburban life into a battlefield of emotions, legal battles, and devastating truths. But just when Mark believes the worst is behind him, a mysterious video arrives, revealing shocking secrets about Clara's lover that change everything he thought he knew. Torn between anger and a flicker of compassion, Mark must decide, will he let the past consume him or use it to reclaim his life? This is a gripping tale of betrayal, revenge, and redemption that will keep you guessing until the final page. The morning began like any other. The smell of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the kitchen as I prepared breakfast for the kids. Clara breezed in, her perfume a touch too strong, her hair immaculate. She looked radiant, almost glowing. In another life, I might have thought it was happiness. But a part of me had started noticing the small cracks in our world. "Morning," she said brightly, kissing my cheek. "I have a late meeting tonight, so don't wait up." Her words echoed in my mind as she left for work. They weren't unusual. Clara had been working late a lot recently, her job in marketing demanding endless hours. Or so she claimed. I had no reason to doubt her. Not then. The first real hint of something amiss came 2 nights later. Clara was in the shower, her phone abandoned on the bedside table. Normally, she kept it close, almost like an extension of herself. A new notification buzzed on the screen, and I glanced at it out of reflex. "Can't wait to see you again, babe. Last night was incredible." Time froze. My stomach dropped, and my heart pounded so loud it drowned out the sound of the shower. The message wasn't from me. A name followed the text, Martin. I knew no Martin in her life, or ours. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the phone. I knew it wasn't right, but curiosity and suspicion overpowered my better judgment. I unlocked the screen using a password I didn't even realize I had memorized. What I found turned my world upside down. The texts were damning. Dozens of messages, some explicit, others casually cruel. Martin wasn't just anyone, he was someone Clara had been seeing for months. They shared private jokes, called each other pet names, and discussed plans for the future. Plans that didn't include me. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. Instead, I slipped the phone back where I found it and lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Every late night, every unexplained charge, every odd behavior suddenly snapped into focus. The puzzle pieces formed an image I couldn't unsee. Clara had been betraying me. The next day, I called in sick to work. I couldn't focus, I couldn't breathe. I needed answers. I started with her work schedule, matching it against our shared credit card statements. It didn't take long to find discrepancies. Dinners at high-end restaurants she had never mentioned. Hotel charges that didn't align with the locations of her supposed conferences. Each discovery twisted the knife a little deeper. Then, I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. It felt surreal, almost like something out of a bad movie. The PI's name was Eric, a grizzled man in his 50s with a no-nonsense demeanor. He listened as I recounted my suspicions, nodding occasionally but offering no sympathy. "I'll find out what you need to know," he said simply. "But be prepared. Once you see the truth, there's no going back." 2 weeks later, Eric handed me a thick envelope. Inside were photographs, receipts, and a detailed report. Clara and Martin weren't discreet. They met in public, shared intimate moments in cafes, and booked romantic weekends at resorts. One photo showed them holding hands at a local park where we used to take the kids. It was almost poetic in its cruelty. "Do you want me to keep digging?" Eric asked. "No," I replied. "This is enough." I drove home in a daze, the envelope sitting on the passenger seat like a coiled snake. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I had made up my mind. Clara wouldn't get away with this. Not without consequences. That evening, I greeted her as usual. I kissed her cheek, asked about her day, and pretended nothing was wrong. Inside, though, a storm raged. She sat across from me at the dinner table, laughing with the kids, and I marveled at how easily she wore the mask of a loving wife and mother. But her facade would crumble soon enough. I would make sure of it. The truth didn't just hurt, it consumed me. For days, I walked around in a haze, mechanically going through the motions of life. Work became an afterthought. My focus shifted entirely to Clara, the lies she told, and the man she shared her secrets with. I had no intention of confronting her without a plan. Confrontation without proof would give her room to manipulate the narrative. I needed her cornered, with no escape. The private investigator's report became my anchor. Every detail he uncovered confirmed what I feared, and I studied it relentlessly. The evidence was overwhelming: photos of Clara and Martin at a cozy cabin 2 hours outside the city, receipts from upscale restaurants, and even an airline itinerary for a conference that didn't exist. She was meticulous in some ways, careless in others. It was the latter that would be her undoing. The night I decided to set my plan in motion started like any other. Clara breezed into the house after another late meeting, her face lit up as if she had been on a romantic getaway. I greeted her with practiced ease, hiding the disgust that churned in my stomach. "You look happy," I said, keeping my voice light. "It was a productive day," she replied, brushing past me to kiss the kids goodnight. The guilt, if it existed, was invisible. She was either a masterful liar or utterly devoid of remorse. Later, as she prepared for bed, I made my first move. "You've been working so hard lately," I said. "I thought it might be nice to plan a little getaway, just the two of us. Maybe rekindle some romance." Her expression faltered for the briefest moment, a flicker of something, guilt, perhaps. But she recovered quickly. "That sounds wonderful," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Let's talk about it tomorrow. I'm exhausted." The next morning, I made sure to leave earlier than usual, claiming an early meeting at work. Instead, I went to the bank. Clara and I shared several accounts, and while I had no intention of draining them, I needed to protect myself. I opened a separate account in my name, transferring a portion of our savings. It wasn't spite, it was survival. By the time I returned home that evening, I felt a sense of grim determination. Clara was already at the dining table, helping our son with his homework. She looked up and smiled, a picture of domestic tranquility. "Dinner's almost ready," she said. "How was your day?" I forced a smile. "Good. Busy." As we ate, I let the conversation flow around me. The kids chattered about school, Clara chimed in with anecdotes about her colleagues, and I nodded along, barely hearing a word. My focus was on the envelope tucked away in my briefcase, the damning evidence that would soon rip this facade apart. Friday night arrived. I had planned it perfectly, a quiet evening at home, just the two of us. The kids were staying with my parents, an arrangement Clara thought was my way of rekindling our relationship. She had no idea what was coming. I cooked dinner, pouring us both generous glasses of wine. Clara seemed relaxed, even happy, as we sat down to eat. I let her lead the conversation, nodding at the right moments, until the meal was finished. As I cleared the dishes, I felt the weight of what I was about to do. This wasn't just about confronting Clara, it was about taking control of a situation that had spiraled out of my hands. By the time I returned to the table, I was ready. "There's something I want to share with you," I said, setting the envelope down in front of her. Her brow furrowed in confusion. "What's this?" "Open it," I replied, keeping my voice steady. Clara hesitated, her hands trembling slightly as she picked up the envelope. She slid the photos out first, images of her and Martin, their smiles intimate, their touches unmistakably affectionate. Her face drained of color as she flipped through them, her breathing shallow. "Care to explain?" I asked. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, tears welled in her eyes, and she launched into a string of excuses. "It's not what it looks like," she stammered. "Martin and we're just friends. Those photos." "Don't," I interrupted. "Don't insult my intelligence. The hotel bookings, the messages, the receipts, it's all there, Clara. Months of lies. Do you even know how many times you've lied to my face?" She broke down then, sobbing into her hands. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she choked out. "It was a mistake. I was lonely. You've been so distant, so busy with work. I needed someone to talk to." Her words hit like bullets, but they only hardened my resolve. "Don't blame this on me," I said coldly. "You had a choice, Clara. And you chose to betray me." I didn't wait for her to respond. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. Divorce papers are ready. You'll hear from them on Monday." Her head shot up, panic replacing the tears. "No, please. We can work through this. I'll end it with Martin. I'll do anything. Just don't end us." The desperation in her voice might have moved me once. But now, it felt hollow. "It's too late," I said. "You ended us the moment you decided my trust wasn't worth keeping." The rest of the night passed in silence. Clara retreated to the bedroom, while I stayed in the living room, the weight of the confrontation settling over me. This was only the beginning of the fallout, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of control over my life. That night, I didn't sleep. The house was suffocatingly quiet, except for the occasional creak of the floorboards as Clara paced in the bedroom. Her world was crumbling, and she knew it. Mine had already shattered, but I wasn't going to let her take me down with her. By morning, I was drained but resolute. Clara emerged from the bedroom looking disheveled, her eyes puffy from crying. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "Don't," I said, my voice firm. "There's nothing left to discuss." "But..." "No," I turned away, gathering my things. "I'm taking the kids to my parents for the weekend. I suggest you use the time to figure out where you're going to live." The car ride to my parents' house was bittersweet. Emma and Noah chattered away in the back seat, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in their parents' marriage. I envied their innocence, but I knew it wouldn't last. Sooner or later, they'd have questions, and I'd have to find a way to explain the unexplainable. My parents welcomed us with open arms, their warmth a stark contrast to the icy tension I'd left behind. Over coffee, I confided in my father, a stoic man who had weathered his share of hardships. "She cheated," I said simply, the words feeling heavier than I expected. His expression hardened. "And you're sure?" "I've seen the proof," I replied. "It's been going on for months." He nodded slowly, his eyes filled with a mix of sympathy and anger. "Then you do what you have to do. Protect yourself and the kids." She made her choice. Returning home late Sunday evening, I found Clara sitting in the living room, her suitcase at her feet. She looked up as I entered, her face a mix of defiance and despair. "I've made arrangements to stay with a friend," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, offering no response. She hesitated, as if waiting for me to stop her, to beg her to stay. When I didn't, she picked up her suitcase and walked out the door. The sound of it closing behind her was both a relief and a finality. The days that followed were a whirlwind of legal appointments and logistical planning. My lawyer, a sharp and empathetic woman named Rachel, wasted no time laying out my options. Clara had committed adultery, which gave me leverage in the divorce. Still, the process was far from simple. "She's going to fight," Rachel warned. "Be prepared for that." And fight she did. Clara contested everything: custody, finances, even the house. She painted herself as the victim, claiming I was emotionally distant, that she had turned to Martin out of desperation. But the evidence was irrefutable, and the judge saw through her facade. The custody battle was the hardest. Clara insisted she deserved equal time with the kids, despite her betrayal. I argued that stability was paramount, that the upheaval of shared custody would only confuse and hurt Emma and Noah. In the end, the judge sided with me. Clara was granted visitation but lost her claim to primary custody. With the legal battles behind me, I began the daunting task of rebuilding. The house, once a haven of love and laughter, now felt like a tomb of memories I wanted to forget. I redecorated, rearranged, and purged every trace of Clara's presence. It was cathartic, a physical manifestation of the emotional cleansing I so desperately needed. Emma and Noah adjusted better than I expected. Kids are resilient, I reminded myself. They adapted to the new normal with the curiosity and flexibility only children possess. Clara's visits were strained but civil, and I made a point of never speaking ill of her in their presence. It wasn't about forgiveness, it was about giving my kids the stability they deserved. Months passed, and the wound began to heal. I threw myself into work, finding solace in the structure and predictability of my job. I reconnected with old friends, joined a local cycling group, and even started therapy to process the betrayal. Slowly but surely, I began to feel like myself again. One day, as I was sorting through a box of old photos, I came across a picture of Clara and me on our wedding day. Her smile was radiant, her eyes filled with hope and love. I stared at it for a long time before tucking it away. The woman in that photo no longer existed, and I needed to let her go. The final piece of closure came unexpectedly. Clara called me one evening, her voice trembling. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she said. "For everything. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I needed you to know." Her words stirred something in me, pity, perhaps, or a faint echo of the love we once shared. But forgiveness was a bridge too far. "I appreciate that," I replied, my tone neutral. "But we're past that now. Focus on the kids. They need you." The line went silent for a moment before she whispered, "Goodbye, Mark." And with that, she was gone. Life after Clara was unexpectedly peaceful. The chaos she had brought into our home gradually dissipated, replaced by a steady rhythm. Work, parenting, and my newfound hobbies became the pillars of my existence. Therapy helped me process the betrayal, and I started to believe in the possibility of a brighter future. But just when I thought the worst was behind me, life had one more twist to throw my way. It began innocuously. A manila envelope arrived in the mail, addressed to me in scrawled handwriting. No return address. My first instinct was to toss it aside, assuming it was junk or some kind of scam. But something about the weight of it made me pause. I opened it cautiously, half expecting it to be another legal document from Clara's lawyer. Inside, I found a single sheet of paper and a USB drive. The letter was short and to the point. "Mark. You deserve the truth. Watch this. A friend." My heart pounded as I plugged the USB into my laptop. A single video file appeared, labeled with a date that was all too familiar. The day of Clara's supposed work retreat 6 months before our divorce. The video began with grainy footage from what appeared to be a hotel lobby. Clara stood near the reception desk, talking animatedly to Martin. They were smiling, their bodies angled toward each other in a way that spoke volumes about their connection. Nothing new, I thought bitterly. I'd already seen enough photos of their affair to fill an album. But the video didn't end there. The perspective shifted as they moved toward an elevator. The camera, clearly handheld, followed them discreetly. They entered the elevator together, laughing, oblivious to the silent observer capturing their every move. My stomach churned as the video continued, showing them entering a hotel room. The camera didn't follow them inside, but the implication was clear. I braced myself for more, but the video abruptly cut to static. Then, another clip began. This one was different, darker, more sinister. It showed Clara, disheveled and visibly upset, leaving the hotel room alone. She glanced over her shoulder nervously, clutching her coat tightly around her. Martin didn't follow. The final clip was a series of still images, time-stamped and dated. They showed Martin meeting another woman in the same hotel later that evening. The images were explicit, leaving no doubt about what had transpired. My stomach turned, a sick realization dawning on me. Martin hadn't just been cheating with Clara, he had been using her. I sat back, stunned. The video raised more questions than it answered. Who had recorded it? And why send it to me now, months after the divorce was finalized? My thoughts were interrupted by the buzzing of my phone. It was Clara. I hesitated before answering. What do you want, Clara? Her voice was shaky, almost frantic. Mark, I need to talk to you. Please. I considered hanging up, but something about her tone stopped me. What is it? There's something I never told you, she said, her words tumbling out in a rush. About Martin. He wasn't who I thought he was. I felt a flash of anger. You think I care about that now? Listen to me, she pleaded. He blackmailed me. He recorded us and threatened to send the videos to my boss, to you, to everyone if I didn't keep seeing him. The room spun as her words sank in. Why didn't you come to me? I demanded. I was ashamed, she said, her voice breaking. And by the time I realized how dangerous he was, it was too late. He ruined my career, Mark. He took everything. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. The anger, the betrayal, the pity, it all swirled together in a chaotic storm. So what do you expect me to do about it now? I asked coldly. I don't know, she whispered. But I thought you should know the truth. After the call ended, I sat in silence, replaying the video in my mind. If what Clara said was true, she had been a victim too, though it didn't absolve her of her betrayal. Still, the revelation stirred something in me. Perhaps closure wasn't as black and white as I had hoped. The next morning, I took the USB to Rachel, my lawyer. She reviewed the footage with the same steely professionalism I had come to admire. When the video ended, she turned to me with a grim expression. This complicates things, she said. If Clara was coerced, it could change how the court views her actions. Do we have to do anything about it? I asked, unsure if I wanted to reopen this Pandora's box. Rachel hesitated. Legally, no. But morally? That's up to you. In the end, I decided to send the footage to Clara. It wasn't forgiveness, it was fairness. She had made her mistakes, but she didn't deserve to be a pawn in Martin's twisted games. A week later, I received another call from Clara. This time, her voice was steady. Thank you, Mark, she said. For everything. I didn't respond, and she didn't expect me to. We both knew there was no going back, but perhaps, in this small act of understanding, we could finally move forward. As I hung up, I felt something unexpected, relief. The past had tried to destroy me, but I had faced it and come out stronger. And for the first time in months, I felt ready to embrace whatever the future held.